Thought I hit go live. There we go. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. I'm going to bring in our Facebook groups again real quick. Let's see. That's Atlanta Falcons on SI. We'll hit the save changes on there. I'm going to refresh the Twitter. See if I can't retweet that one too. I'm going to put that one in the chat. So if y'all happen to be on X, give this a retwatter. If you happen to have an X account, see if we can't get some folks on X to come in and find us a little bit. And we're good. Welcome in, everybody. My name is Scott Kennedy. I will be your host for the Falcons Podcast. Apologies for being just a few minutes late, but one of the reasons we're late is because I wasn't expecting to see this guy over here on this side because he's been dealing with some family illness over the last week or so, and his wife's still in the hospital. Finally got some backup from the mother-in-law to come in and help, but I wasn't expecting to see Nick. So I didn't even ask him, hey, are you coming? Because he's had a rough go of it. So This is going to be a nice distraction for Nick to be here and join us for a conversation of the 5 keys. It's going to be hard to keep it to 5 for a successful Atlanta Falcons season. So how you doing, brother?
Not the Father's Day I was hoping for yesterday, but, spent a lot of time with my wife in the hospital over the last week. They don't know what's going on, but she just keeps spiking a fever. Hopefully they'll figure it out, but she's miserable. I appreciate the good well wishes. Hopefully a little bit of normalcy this week, just tired in many ways, but we're here to talk football, a little bit of distraction for a bit, some normalcy. And I appreciate the kind thoughts.
Yeah, that's good. Like I said, I'm happy. The show is better when you're here anyway, but I'm happy for you that you're here just to get in here and take your mind off some things and talk some football. I started when I thought I was doing the show solo. I was like, well, let me do some 5 keys. That a nice breakdown. That'll give me a nice subject matter I can go through. And as I started going through, I started with 3. I'm like 3 keys. And then I started listening. I'm like 5 keys. And then I started putting in sub categories. I'm like, okay, 10 keys. There's a lot of them. And when you start going through this, you're like, okay, some of these are more likely to happen than others. But one of the things that we've talked about, Nick, is, and I've said over and several times that I think the big in the equation, in this math equation of the Falcon season, I think the big variable is the defense. That said, I'm kind of assuming that Michael Penix is at least going to be somewhere where he was last year, which is a high, not necessarily high volume, but he was throwing for big yards against some bad defenses, but he was throwing for some big yards. I don't expect the Falcons offense to take much of a step back. So I kind of think of that as a constant. But number 1 on your list of keys has to be Michael Penix. I mean, it does. Mm-hmm. I just think the variance level there, I feel pretty good about that one. But him being the guy, I don't even want to say the guy that they're hyping him up to be, because the hype around Michael Penix right now is through the freaking roof. Mm-hmm. Just being a competent NFL quarterback in the 15 range, even average, is a key. But I feel good about that one. When we talk about probability, I feel good about that one with the infrastructure around him, including the second year, second time offensive coordinator. And then all the pieces around him. I mean, that offense is a veteran offense.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it from the beginning. It comes down to your quarterback at the end of the day, as long as everything else is at least, not glaring weakness, which obviously defense was last season. But biggest variable, biggest percentage of your success is going to come down to the quarterback. So can he clean up the big misses that he has? The consistency and the accuracy, for every 5 throws, he'll have one that's, like, whoa, where was that one going? The scatter shot kind of some from time to time. Can he stay healthy? What does that look like? Can he protect the football? All these things. But you're right. He is definitely the key for success this season. I'll be curious to see if his yardage total regresses some compared to last season, because I feel like some of that last year was our defense couldn't, stop a nosebleed, let alone an opposing NFL offense. So just by nature of game flow, he's going to be passing a lot and racking up yards. But we'll see. I mean, obviously the big key, second year, and we'll also see, Scott, about if you expect them to stay the same. I feel like a lot of times, did they add anybody this offseason? Is there any sort of different dial they can push, or an area where they're like, okay, we feel a little bit weak here. We didn't really love what we saw in-house.
Michael Penix.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
I mean,
So
in essence, the
yeah,
answer to this really is Michael Penix and the physical tools that he brings to the field on a 17-game basis is different. He's more athletic. He's more mobile. He's got a stronger arm.
it's the
All
arm.
those things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the answer. Otherwise, the other 10 are the same. There's
So
nobody else that came in that's going to be like, oh, yeah, this new guy is going to make a difference. No, it's Michael Penix.
So I would contend a little bit that there's more of a chance for regression than maybe you hinted at there, just because they didn't add anywhere on the offense. That maybe, and we'll get to the next point for you, but some of your next points are these guys being keys. Like, well, because of that, I think you are maybe a little bit more of a regression candidate in the offense. But you're right. At the end of the day, the quarterback, we come back to the first point, the quarterback's the biggest variable, and that makes it where you're, I guess, a less of a regression candidate still. But the fact that I didn't do anything on offense, I still think it's worth noting for some just natural regression on that side of the ball.
And but the counter to that then is that, what we saw from Michael Penix was him taking his first ever snaps with the first team. He came in as like Darnell Mooney's like, the first time I ever saw us throw was this week. What? He wasn't throwing to Drake London. So that's the flip side to that, is that, okay, he was good in his 3-game cameo. Now he's got the whole off season. We're not talking about a 20-year-old rookie. We're not talking about J.J. McCarthy coming in. And J.J. McCarthy may light it up, but he's coming off an injury and has zero experience. And he's young. So I think he's 21, maybe 22 years old this year. Penix is in that Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix mold at 25 years old, has some experience. And frankly, he's got the weapons around him that he actually, I know this is crazy, gets to work with prior to playing a game. So I think, again, there is a variance there, but it's not as huge as some of these other ones that we'll talk about. But I want to say hello to some folks in the chat. That's why we go live. And again, I had to catch up with Nick I was about to hit go live. I came in to hit go live. I was like, wait a minute, Nick's here. So again, apologies for being late. Catching up with him. Now I want to catch up with y'all just a bit. I hope everybody had a good weekend, and you haven't had to canoe your way to work. Like, it's rained every day since like Easter here in Atlanta. It's nuts. It seriously, it feels like a rainforest here, which means August, September, and October will probably be dry as a bone. But Austin Fries was in here first. He says, good morning, fam. Now the long wait until training camp. Yeah, we got about a month. Can't wait to see how those camp battles go. A lot of pressure on some of those guys. I want to see how Rook Arohoro does. He's an athletic freak. Yeah, I think he was like a 9.9 on the relative athletic score. So, and he was, for all intents and purposes, I used to call that intensive purposes up until I was about 30. For all intents and purposes, he was a first-round pick. I mean, he was 35 overall, and you used a third pick to get to 35. So you used 35 and a third rounder. That's the equivalent of a back-end first rounder as far as I'm concerned. But he's on here. He's on the list too, at least in honorable mentions. Rook. Michael, good to see you. Unbeatable, 310, 3210. Good to see you. John, hope you had a good weekend as well. Psalm gets up early with us out in California. Welcome. Edward Brown's talking about keys with a super. Thank you for breaking the ice on the super chat with us. It really helps keep the lights on, keep my forehead nice and shiny this time of year, especially when traffic comes down a little bit. This really helps. So thank you, Edward. He says, defense, get off the field on third downs. Absolutely. And I'd take more big plays. And if they're going to score anyway, like they did last year, I think the Falcons were bottom 3 in points per drive against. If they're going to score anyway, I just assume them score quicker. Let's get the ball back to the offense and try and develop a rhythm on offense. So I want the offense to have the ball more, and I'm expecting that to be because the defense is getting it back for them a little more often, not just with third downs, but with turnovers. Let's put a little pressure on that quarterback, see if we can get a couple backside strip sacks, force some bad throws, maybe get a couple turnovers, because the turnover differential wasn't good last year.
No, I mean, we've talked about it a lot. We'll see, because typically underneath Saleh, Ulbrich has been more rush 4 with 7 in the back and not been as turning the dials with the pressure pieces that they have. But this defense feels a little bit more set up for pressure up front with a different Swiss Army knife and pass rush oriented pieces. You don't want them to be getting double teams and being more read and react. You want them pressing gaps. So we'll see. Again, how much was Salah, how much was Ulbrich for that kind of defensive philosophy. We will find out. And also a good defensive coordinator. If you don't have the pieces you ideally want to run, you adapt. You build your defense to what you have. So again, it's going to be hard to not be better than last season, but it'll be interesting to see. And yeah, I agree with your point, Scott. Maybe you're giving up a little bit more explosives here and there. You're a little bit more volatile, but the aggressiveness up front and leading to those havoc plays, which are sacks and turnovers that could, be the key this season.
Yeah, the Falcons may give up a few more points. They may give up a few more yards, and they could still be better on defense. Again, just by the offense scoring more quickly and the defense being more aggressive and more 3-and-outs, but maybe a couple more big plays. I'm okay with that. I don't have Super Bowl expectations for this team. There's too many young players. There's too many questions on defense. But I want to see some big plays. I want to see some excitement on the defense. If James Pierce gets a sack for a strip fumble and on the next play they beat him around the edge for an 80-yard screen play, okay, I can live with that. We can fix the back part. What I haven't seen is the fun stuff off the edge. So I do want to see all that stuff. James Bostwick, good to see you. Hope you're doing well down in Naples. I was just looking at your map yesterday, looking at a baseball tournament in Fort Myers next week. I'm like, no, that one's a little bit too far away from I'm going to be in so probably not going to be here next week. I'm going to be out of town. So probably little programming note. I'm probably not going to be here next week. Alan, good to see you. Made it. Good morning, Scott and Nick and the Falcons Nation. That's all y'all. Seems like it's never going to stop raining in the Southeast. It's like, oh, it hasn't rained today. It's got to come sooner or later. Every day. It feels like Central Florida every single day. And it's been coming at night, too. We had some pretty good thunder bangers last night. Red Swarm, good to see you. NBA, what time will we start? About 8:39, about when you posted this. Again, apologies. We're just a couple minutes late because I had to catch up with Nick for a second. I wasn't expecting to see him. Calder, good to see you as well. AJ, happy Monday. A1 37 sauce, good to see you as well. And AJ, a lot of folks saying we're looking, we're thinking about you, Nick, thinking for your family. Master Kioski is here. Troy, we're live. Terry, good to see you as well. Chris, one of the OGs. Smooth 78. Sam, good to see you as well. Nick said our defense. He's converting. I'm really, really. I only do that when I say like the royal we. I'm just from the school and with talking about recruiting, and frankly, I don't fan like I used to. So I get a lot of comments. In the comments, people say about like being a fan. This isn't really a fan podcast from us two. Yes, I grew up a Falcons fan, but God, I've been doing sports media for so long. About the only place I really, truly fan still is my kids and then Chelsea Football Club. So I'll say like us in Atlanta as, ATLians or something like that. But the royal we, let me see here. Stephen B has a good point here. And honestly, talking about my keys, I'm gonna do this with a negative here because as Stephen B says, he says our running backs are more experienced. Bijan might not need to carry such a huge load early. I didn't put Bijan Robinson on my keys. Why? Because Bijan Robinson can have, unless he's getting the ball every time and has a bad season, that's a thing. But Bijan Robinson, let's say just hypothetically completely, Bijan Robinson was gone. Someone came and offered 2 first-round draft picks for him, and you took it. You took 2 first-round draft picks, which doesn't help your team at all right now, and Bijan's gone. That wouldn't decimate your team. Tyler Algier is a really good running back, and he's going to get paid like a really good running back. That wouldn't decimate your team as maybe some of these other keys that we're going to talk about. Bijan is, I'm not going to say he's a luxury, but he is a difference maker. Don't get me wrong. I think Bijan's probably the most talented player on the team, but there's some redundancy there.
Yeah.
If Drake London goes down, I'm scared to death.
Yeah.
If Caleb McGarry plays like crap, I'm scared to death. Those are like my keys. Bijan, Bijan and Tyler are arguably the best running back tandem in the league. And if Bijan, for some reason, couldn't carry the load, Tyler Algier is more than capable of stepping up for a season in a contract year.
I'm with you. You're kind of talking a little bit more about the floor there, but I will push back on the ceiling talk. I think Bijan is probably the second or third best running back in football right now, probably the second most talented behind Saquon. Obviously, you got Gibbs, you got Henry out there as well. We'll see what happens with McCaffrey this year. But yeah, I think that with having a first full year quarterback, still questions on the defensive side of the ball, questions about the wide receiver depth. And what we've seen with the trends of the NFL over the last 2 seasons, somebody like Robinson can be the identity of a team and take the load off of Penix in the drop back pass game. So you don't need him to be the superstar demigod kind of player. So when you have somebody that talented, yes, you do have Algier, and yes, it is still a running back at the end of the day. So you do have some coverage, I guess, there, like if he's out for a bit or something happens, you get those 2 first-round picks offered. But I mean, for a key for success, the ability to have, and you mentioned if Drake London goes down, I think it was you or somebody in the chat mentioned it as well. It's like, well, you still have an offensive superstar who the offense can run through. If London goes down, it's not as good as having a wide receiver, not as valuable, I guess, but it's still an identity piece and just a total culture shift up front. So I think that Robinson, I'd still would say, is one of the guys. When you listed the guys before the show, I'm like, I'm going to throw Robinson.
He's a key player without a doubt. Maybe I'm taking him for granted a little bit. And I'm also a huge Tyler Algier fan. Of course. Yeah. The other aspect, that's part of it. And is Bijan better than Tyler? Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. Make no mistake about it. So if you've already started punching in your comments after the fact, and you're watching this on demand, yes, maybe I'm taking his greatness a little bit too much for granted.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a passing league, and Bijan is a weapon as a receiver too.
And the other aspect, I think we can say this without, I've been operating this way for a bit, but kind of looking at Saquon Barkley last year as a small sample size, but a case study. Your running back is still only ever as good as the offensive line. And while the Falcons offensive line isn't bad by any means, it's not a top 5. We're going to do whatever we want up front every single week kind of unit. And that does limit what they can do as far as the run it, tell them what you're going to do before the snap and do it anyway type of stuff that you kind of get a feeling from the Lions or the Eagles with those unbelievably great offensive lines. So I think that's another aspect. It's a little capped as long as unless the offensive line is a top 5, top 7, no doubt unit. They're fine, but they are not the strength of the offense and an identity of the team and the culture.
Some might argue that though. That's where the veterans, and as much if I go to Spot Rack and sort by position, who's getting paid what? Now they've got 2 guys on rookie contract. Well, not really on rookies anymore, but they've got 2 relatively inexpensive guys with Newsel now and Bergeron. But they put a bunch of money into that. And Jake Matthews is good. Chris Lindstrom is good. And Caleb McGarry is really good at what he does. Mm-hmm. I think you're underselling this offensive line just a little bit.
Maybe. I think I'm trying to pull up Ben Baldwin's.
Especially on what they do, what they want to do. When they want to impose their will on a team and run the ball, they can.
Yeah.
They can. We've seen that for 3 years. Reminds me of 80s football. Falcons could always run the ball. That's one of the segments I want to do this summer. Is kind of our all most underrated team, and I don't want this to derail the chat, but I got that idea when one of the Falcons podcasts kind of put up the discussion, like, who's the best Falcons running back of all time, blah, blah, blah. And I go through it, and there's like 10 guys mentioned, and Gerald Riggs wasn't even on the list. I'm like, for right now, Gerald Riggs is kind of number 1 for me. What he did in the 80s. I'm like, how is he not even in the discussion, for God's sakes?
Yeah. And this is the composite ranking Ben Baldwin puts together every week. And he did the end of the year one where it's ESPN and PFF's blocking rate, which again, it's not perfect by any means. But when you take enough metrics together, I think it's at least interesting to look at. And the Falcons, I don't know how well you can see it, but they're in the top right.
Yeah, it shows up well. They're in the quadrant you want them in.
Yeah, they're good, but I'm talking about the teams where you see I didn't mention the the Chiefs, their running interior offensive line has been unbelievable. And also the Buccaneers. I can't believe I didn't mention them, but those are teams where it's their identity and they can do what they want no matter what up front.
But part of that is also they've got the ability to pass when they want to. Did the Falcons, especially towards the end of the season? Teams would dare you to pass on them, and it didn't work. The Buccaneers didn't work for them. Kirk Cousins got about half of his numbers against them. Yeah. But then once it started going bad, I could put 10 guys in the box and dare you to beat me. It's one of the reasons why Bijan Robinson doesn't have hardly any runs over 30 yards. He's facing stacked boxes all the time. So I think this is a little bit, it's when I look at these teams, which one was kind of the most unbalanced, which one was more one-dimensional. Seeing the Colts there, that's a little surprising because the Colts offense wasn't a passing offense. No. The Cardinals are good at they're seeing them there is kind of eye-opening as well because we know they're not a huge passing team. Kyler Murray's had some success and gets paid a lot of money. But we know the Falcons can improve stretching the defense. And seeing less stacked boxes on this. All right. Want to
some of it's scheme. Also, like you see, like Shanahan up there, Pritzker with the Cardinals. Some of it's scheme. At the end of the day, setting those guys up the right situation, knowing when to push the right button. So sorry to interrupt. I know you're trying to move on, but
no, that's okay. I interrupt you all the time, so I feel good when you interrupt me. I'm like, okay, good. That's like 1 out of every 10 he's gotten me back. Alan says there is a rumor of a trade between the Falcons and Bengals for the Bengals first-round pick, Shamar Stewart. Yeah, just go ahead and piss on that rumor. No way. The Falcons have already used now. They wouldn't have to trade a first-round pick, but they're not going to trade a second-round pick for Shamar Stewart at this point. They're done trading picks for edge rushers, as far as I'm concerned. They did it. They swapped first, and then this is how I'm going to say this trade for the rest of my life. I'm not going to say the way the mainstream media does. Oh, they traded a first and second to get James Pierce. No, they didn't. They swapped firsts, and they went down from a second to a late third to get Stewart, which means they used their first round pick already. They're not going to get Shamar Stewart. And I don't want him in that room. I've got enough young edge rushers right now. I need Jalen Walker, and I need James Pierce Jr. learning, improving. I don't need 3 of those guys, for God's sakes. And he's not tough enough to play inside. So I'd rather have Zach Harrison for this team. I'd rather have Zach Harrison than Shamar Stewart. Zach can play inside. He could play a legit defensive end. Shamar Stewart, I don't see that. So let's just go ahead and say no thanks. And and AJ said, talking about the 4.5 sacks in 4 seasons. I can't quite figure out how to word this joke, but with Shamar Stewart, if he ends up sitting out the year, he'll only have 1 less sack than usual. So he only had 1.5 sacks in 3 years. How would you even notice if he sat out? I'm not blaming Stewart on this one though. The Bengals are kind of have a long history of being a pain in the ass when it comes to contracts, and how that happens when you've got slotted rookie deals is just stupid. It's just dumb, Nick. We haven't had a holdout in 10 years for rookies, especially for money things. That used to happen more often when there was no rookie cap, rookie slots. We haven't seen that in a decade, and it's so stupid by the Bengals. It's like, oh, we actually don't want him.
Is there some weird caveat where he can go back in the draft if he doesn't sign
next year? Yeah, they'll throw you. When you draft a guy, you have. Last time I saw this happen really was baseball with JD Drew. He went and played independent league.
Oh, yeah,
he went and played independent league for a year and then went back in the draft and fell a little bit. And the Cardinals ended up drafting him. I don't remember who took him back then, but they made him the biggest offer in the history of rookies. And Scott Boras is up there saying they're trying to steal this kid's love of the game. And I was so mad. Boras has kind of disappeared for a while now, like from the talking so much. Now he just makes this guys all the money in the world and does it behind the scenes. But Shamar Stewart will be eligible to go back into the draft, next year's draft. They own it for a year. They own his draft rights for a year. Carrie, good to see you from Destin, Florida. Good for you. one of the most gorgeous places in the world. I grew up going down to the Gulf and realized that, gosh, these are like the nicest beaches in the country. You know, you go to the Atlantic side, you're like, blech. You go out to the Pacific, you're like, this is cold. The Gulf is where it's at.
Yeah, it is cold in the Pacific, but man, it is beautiful. I mean, when you see an orca off in the
Yeah,
distance.
but we're talking about sugar beaches here. For the beach life,
yes.
You cannot beat the Gulf.
No, my wife, her grandparents were snowbirds. You can do that when you're living in Iowa, the cost of living, but they'd go down to Okaloosa Island, which is right there by Destin, Florida. I mean, it's like spongy sand. I don't even know how to explain it, but yeah, waking up, coffee in the morning, seeing stingrays or dolphins. I mean, yeah, it is beautiful out there. Good to see you, Carrie. She also says, please hit that like button, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your much deserved vacation. Hopefully it's not too hot down there. I haven't been down there in the summer, but good time. I mean, I miss the seafood out that way too when I've gone down. Granted, we have good seafood in the Pacific Northwest, but it's a little different. I complain from AJ says I complain about Blank at times, but at least we don't have Cincinnati owners. It could be certainly worse. Blank's issues are not from a lack of trying, and I think he puts money in the right place. And I also think he's not overly hands-on either. But when you don't hit on quarterback and head coach, there's not much you can do. You can have terrible ownership. Kansas City Chiefs. If you hit on the quarterback and the head coach, it works pretty well for you. So it's just one of the 4 pillars.
Our biggest complaint with Blank, for the most part, is he's loyal to a fault.
Yeah.
You know, he it's like he becomes enamored with the personalities, and that's been the problem. You wonder where that happened with Arthur Smith, but you know, a lot of folks say Arthur Smith was a nepotism hire. You know, I think Arthur Smith did a good job the first 2 years, and then they had a fatal flaw of quarterback in year 3. But I think they did a good job the first 2 years, though it might have been better to just tank. It might have been better, instead of being 7-10, to have a couple years where you were, you know, 3-14, and get one of those, get that Aiden Hutchinson in there or somewhere along those lines. So, but no, I don't. I call them micro problems some of the time. There's macro and micro problems. Micro problems are everywhere. Everybody complains about ownership. Macro problems are Cincinnati, are Carolina Panthers. You know, those guys down there that are just completely embarrassing the franchise. Let's talk about getting back to the subject, though. I had number 2 on my list of keys as Caleb McGarry. Caleb McGarry being a serviceable pass blocker and being a good right tackle is going to be a key to this team. Now, let's not forget, the season went in the tank when Caleb McGarry got whipped off the line of scrimmage and Kirk Cousins got buried. The Falcons were 6-3 at the time, and it went downhill quickly after that. I think 1-5 was that stretch, and a lot of it had to do with that play. So McGarry, I think, in his ability to play well, is going to be a big key for this season that I'm going to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. So next, McGarry. Sorry, I got distracted there for a second. Got a message from my wife. But no, McGarry is a big one. We've been talking about him for years now as a concern there, and now you have him flipped as the blindside protector for Michael Penix. Now, granted, I think that's overstated with how much shotgun you have. Your field of vision is different, and it used to be, you know, your best pass rusher is always lined up against the left tackle, and now your best pass rusher, if they're any good and your defense coordinator is any good, we're going to find the weakness and isolate them with scheme and matchups. So that's not as much of a thing, but still, teams can figure out, again, to that point, they can isolate your best or your worst pass protector and get them against their best one. And McGarry has shown some concerns in pass protection. You can mitigate some of that with the run game and with help in the formations and everything. But at some point, it is a drop back passing game league, and you have to operate with options in space and without help, and your guys have to hold up in their one-on-ones. So McGarry is definitely a big piece there. And we'll see. If he goes down there, I mean, you didn't invest anything in the offensive line on that front. I mean, You brought in, Jack Nelson. I don't know how he's been doing out there in OTAs. Is he playing guard now? He felt kind of a little bit tweenery coming out. But no, he's definitely a huge piece. And just in general, the health of the offense and the offensive line, since you didn't bring in literally anybody, you got to stay freaking healthy.
Yeah, I think, again, I want to double check on this as far as Storm Norton's still on the roster. Storm, I had forgotten when I was putting together the graphic for this show, one of the picture I used was actually Caleb McGarry being helped off. So it wasn't just in that game against the Chiefs that they had a real chance of winning. We all know the non-pass interference call. It wasn't just Drew Dahlman that went down in that game. Caleb McGarry went down in that game too. So Storm Norton, I think, is a really good backup player. He's been, when he's come in, he's done a really good job. So I feel good about that one. And I didn't put Newsel down as, one of the keys. He played 9 games last year. He played almost exactly half the season because he came in the middle of one game. That's a half. And then he started 8 games. That's 8.5 of 17 games. We've seen Ryan Newsel. He can play. He's not a huge liability. He's not an unknown. So, I didn't include him in there, where Caleb McGarry's play can be, again, the word we've used a little bit is volatile. Let me see here. I'm gonna skip down to 1. This was my 5th key, is what Alan said. And this could be, again, I ended up with like 10. Why do the Falcons have an over-under of 7.5 wins? Because there are a lot of questions for this team, but some of them have multiple answers. So, and this is one of them. The defensive backfield, to me, is still a question mark. However, the Falcons went out there and they brought in several players for the nickel spot. There's competition there. I'm not counting on, will D. Alford make a jump? Well, if he doesn't, maybe Clark Phillips steps up. If he doesn't, maybe Billy Bowman steps up. If he doesn't, well, hell, maybe the Falcons bring in Jair Alexander and Mike Hughes steps into the nickel. There's people there. So as far as, do you think Billy Bowman is going to take the nickel spot? I think he will in spots early because he's the most physical presence there by a lot. By far, compared to D. Alford and Clark Phillips. Right now, I like Clark Phillips to try. I love the way he plays the game, but I don't think it'll be D. Alford getting the majority of the snaps at nickel. I think it'll be either Clark Phillips or Billy Bowman. I think Billy Bowman probably has the edge for getting the most snaps in that position in 2025.
Yeah, we'll see what they do as far as what their base personnel or their early down defense wants to be. And maybe it's something where you see Bowman on first and second down and somebody more cornerback centric as opposed to safety centric in obvious pass downs, where the coverage matters a little more than the run fits and the physicality. We don't typically see that from defenses. Typically you start your cornerbacks, whoever's out there is out there. It's not really a rotation position, some of the communication stuff and everything, but certainly possible. And that's an area where if you have different body types based on down and distance, that would make a lot of sense to me. That'd be a good question for a coach. Maybe it's, good on paper, but not on the field. But we do not see that very often. So yeah, Bowman is an interesting one. Very physical safety. We'll see how they use him. They also got Kobe Bryant as well, everybody's favorite undrafted free agent. You're playing a little bit of a shotgun there, or a shotgun approach with the cornerback position outside of
shot.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of you're spreading your assets out without a huge premium investment, but you're hoping that you hit 1 or 2 spreading those around. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting, and that's one of those spots where OTAs, mandatory minicamp, whatever you want to call it, they're not necessarily, kind of like the Senior Bowl, the most indicative of your ability out there because it's set up for the pass catcher to win those reps, right? You don't have the normal spacing, and quarterbacks can just sit there and hitch until the guy comes open for a lot of the drills. Coaches will yell at them for that, but still, it's not really meant in the actual NFL game setting. But you got a lot of different options. We'll see how it plays out. Other than AJ Terrell, I think it's question after question.
My favorites are the double moves, how everybody loses their mind off the double moves. Guys, when you're watching those, I want you to remember this. When I was running high school camps and combines, we did not allow double moves. We didn't allow them. They're basically unfair. to a defensive back in a one-on-one situation that we did not even allow double moves, because just a guy can run a double move and cook a defensive back. I'm not really learning anything about him. Now, if I can drive him off the ball and come off and get an outrider, and if I can run right on by him, that means something. But we didn't even allow double moves at the camps that we ran. Whoa, what a route. Yeah, the quarterback was sacked 3 times. Didn't even allow him. Talking about, the defensive backfield is a key for me for this team. This was one of my wild cards. Jack Piazzi comes in and says, Helms is a big nickel enforcer for us. I put him down as one of the wild cards. When you're looking at safety right now, you're looking at probably, I think, Xavier Watts, Jordan Fuller, keep the spot warm for him, and then Xavier Watts comes in. But Helms is there. Helms is going to be there, and he's not going away. Yeah. So I like his I like him as a possibility on there. I think he's got a pretty good chance, even if it's just as a special teams guy. I think he's got a chance to make the 53. It wouldn't totally surprise me if Braylon Trice did not start this season on the 53, whether they IR'd him or something like that, where he gets another 6 weeks of working out and recovery before they make a decision on him. I just think when you're talking about him being edge rusher 5 right now, that he's no guarantee to be on the active roster. I don't think they'd cut him, but he's got an existing injury that they could do something with that in the offseason. Helms has a real chance to make it even as a special teams guy. I kind of combined these two for number 3 for me, but one of the keys, kind of a sleeper key, again, one of the things we kind of take for granted, but is can you expect and are you going to get the same level of production from your wide receivers down the depth chart? Drake's Drake. If Drake's healthy, Drake's going for a big year this year. I think he's a 1,400-yard guy, 10 touchdown guy. I think he's in for a big year. I like Darnell Mooney a lot, but he had a great season last year. Can he do it again? Ray had a career year last year. Can he do it again? Can we get 1,700 yards from wide receivers 2 and 3 like we did last year here in Atlanta? Maybe, probably, you think, but that's a key. That's a key. I didn't even put Kyle Pitts on here, and you could put him in there. And there's a question. Now I'm going to turn it over, Nick.
Yeah.
We're expecting all these. Oh, yeah, Bijan's in for a huge year. Darnell's in for a huge year. Drake's in for a huge year. Well, not everybody can have a huge year. Who's the disappointment? Who's the disappointment this year? Is it Kyle Pitts again? That's where I'd put my money.
It feels like he's kind of been phased out last year. I mean, you're not giving up on him. And the thing is, we talked about it with like Tyler Algier. Maybe Tyler Algier's in for a disappointment this year. You mentioned him just because he doesn't get the opportunity, right? You're not seeing somebody asked earlier about the fullback.
That was one of my options too, was Tyler. Absolutely.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for him if he was not the largest volume, but still efficient out there. But, definitely, I guess the one I would bet on would be Mooney because he has had injuries in his career, and he is the older of the guys we've listed here. And last year was an outlier comparison to the rest of his career. I'm not banking on London. I'm not really.
His year 2, Darnell's year 2 was really good.
Pretty good too.
That was I think that was Justin Fields' first year, and then years 2 and 3 were pretty poor.
Yeah,
that was actually 3 and 4 in his career, and then he was gone. And then he had more yards last year than he had in the previous 2 years with Justin Fields as his quarterback.
Yeah. And that makes sense with Justin Fields and his struggles. Loved him coming out, but obviously has not hit as a quarterback. But I guess I don't have huge expectations for Pitts. So the one who I think may be due for regression candidacy would be Mooney. But I mean, he was awesome last year, and I hope that's not the case. But just looking at it, that's an area where I kind of, given what he's put out on the field, seems like he was maybe at a ceiling last year, and you could expect a little regression from him.
Yeah. So again, not everybody can have career years. There will be some disappointments, and that's how you make decisions. These guys kind of select. The word I'm looking for, the phrase, but pay. They kind of self-pay themselves, or they fit into their roles because there's only one football. So who's going to regress a little bit or not live up to expectations. The two that I would bet the highest on as meeting expectations are Drake and Bijan. I think they're the two surest things on this offense. After that, I do like Darnell Mooney. And then I'm not as sure about Ray. That was truly an outlier for him. He had like as many yards as he's had in his career. He's been a return specialist. Mm-hmm. And then, is Tyler, are there going to be enough carries for him to come around? But, not everybody can have a career year. There's only one ball. So, again, I think it's worth, what about trading Kyle Pitts? Now you're trading low. I think it's worth the $11 million gamble. And I've said this all along. It's worth the $11 million gamble to see if you can squeeze something out of him this year. Franchise tag him if he has a good year, and then you're negotiating from a position of strength if you do want to trade him then. You've got a positive asset. Right now you still have potential, but 4 years in the league and potential means you'll be lucky to get a third or fourth round pick as opposed to, he steps up and has a 1,000-yard season and 8 touchdowns and a franchise tag. Well, now he's not only an asset, he's an asset you have under contract. If you want to trade him, you can. Now you've got options. Jet Jones, good to see you. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Says, good morning, Scott and Nick. What are y'all's plans for the 5-week break? Next week, I will be out of town, so there's 1 week of it. But other than that, we're still going to do Mondays and Wednesdays. We'll figure something out. News comes up all the time. You kind of ask yourself, what do you want to do? And then if we run into things, we'll come up with topics, good discussion topics, that come up. Who belongs in the Hall of Fame? And I said the all underrated team. Already, there's so many. That's one of the things you never really think of from the outside, Nick. You wouldn't know this, except that you've been doing this for 4 years now. But the Falcons have had some really, really good running backs through their history. Who remembers Ironhead Hayward? Ironhead Hayward went for like 1,300 yards in the run and shoot. I think T.J. Duckett had 1,000 yards. John Settle, the first 1,000-yard free agent in history of the NFL. We can start going through all those kind of things. Wide receivers. Well, everybody knows Roddy and Julio. What about after that? Who's your next guy? We'll do some fun stuff like that. And Jet Jones doing stuff like this, make sure we'll be here. So thank you so much for the super chat, my friend.
Yeah, hoping to get out and do some hikes and hoping my wife gets healthy because we're going to have to pack up this house and get where we're going here. We should have known by now, but everything's been delayed because she's been in the hospital. So, we'll be around and, a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of hypotheticals, position by position. There's a lot to discuss with this team as we can peel that onion.
Let me see here. Brian, good to see you. Glad you're here. Welcome in. We're at 42 minutes, so we're going to get out of here pretty soon. For the repeats for the wide receivers, this is a big key as well. It's, the personnel on the defensive line. And again, one of the questions we get, is this a 3-4 or is a 4-3? And I just answer yes. It's going to be both. You might start in first down in a 4-3. You might start in a 3. And then on second down, you're in a 4. That doesn't really matter anymore. There's no base defense anymore, except for last year. The Falcons' base defense was a 2-5 prevent. All right, I'll let it go maybe in 20 more years. We'll see. This Irishman carries a grudge, man, and last year pissed me off. So there's multiple on there. So I don't know that you need, though I'd like another big zero tech, one gap plugging defensive tackle nose guard type. There are ways that you can put bodies out there in a 4-man front where I go at least 280 across the front 4. And I've got speed at linebacker too. So that's all good. But there's still a lot of unproven personnel out there. Rook is a big one out there. How good can he be in year 2 is a big variable in this defense. Brandon Dorlus, what can he add? Zach Harrison, what's his role going to be? As far as, stand-up edge, no. You can tell me that, I don't believe it. And if it is, then he's not going to have a role. He's big defensive end. Well, that's in a 4 or a 3. He's got his hand down in the rubber pellets. Yeah. There's bodies there, and there's variable types of bodies out there. Morgan Fox, he's not a stand-up edge. He's a 4-3 defensive end, and he's undersized for a 3-4. But there are 3-4 guys out there. I can put a 3-4 line out there pretty easy. So it's going to be multiple, and seeing how they're used and how effective they can be is a key to this season.
Yeah, and it's going to be, again, it's the shotgun approach up front, and there's a lot of jobs on the line, but opportunities as well. So may the cream rise to the top, and you kind of set those rotations. But it's the example I always like to use, Scott, is in the Dark Knight, where the Joker snaps the pool cue over his knee and says, "We're having tryouts." That's where we're at with secondary, pass rush, all those areas. So go hunt. Let the dogs eat.
Having tryouts.
Yep. And that's where we're at. So, Michael Ronquillo, good to see you. Hope you're staying cool. I know it's the hot spell in a lot of the country right now. It's absolutely unbelievably gorgeous out here in Seattle this week. It's been mid-60s and sunny. Michael Ronquillo says, Scott and Nick with the Falcons. Rookies have a best chance to win Rookie of the Year this year. I mean, I think you probably go with – that's a good – I mean, it has to be one of the 2 first-round picks. Yeah. But which one do you go with? I feel like Walker has a chance to play more total snaps, but Pierce has a chance to play more stat-eating snaps, if that makes sense. I think he's going to be set up to, what wins Rookie of the Year? Sacks. And I think Pierce has a little bit easier chance to get the sacks on this defense. But really, it could be either of them. That's a good conversation. That might be its own episode at some point.
Yeah, its own show. And frankly, Michael and Falcons Nation country fans, family out there, it wouldn't break my heart if they cannibalized one another and someone else won it. Mm-hmm. Oh, we couldn't give it to Pierce or Walker because they both had 8 sacks. And this guy who dominated one single market, Abdul Carter, had 10. Fine. Sign me up. I'll take it. But again, I'm kind of with Nick on this. Who plays the most of the rookies? The one with the most snaps might end up be Xavier Watts. He might have the most snaps of all the rookies this year. But as a safety, he's not going to win defensive, Rookie of the Year unless something just completely off the wall happens. It ain't going to happen. Pierce is probably the better pure pass rusher. And if he gets numbers and, gets the stats that pop to people that aren't paying attention, and that's what they look at, then I would go James Pierce on there. Good question. Tony, Big Buck Buchanan said, finally got to catch y'all live. Well, I'm glad you're here. Catch y'all live. Good morning. Hopefully, Scott, I run into you at training camp. So what do you guys think we are good at interior line, or should we be buyers? We hit on this just a little bit. And I think you're always looking to improve. As a general manager, my job is to replace you. That's just flat out what it is. That's my job. I'm a GM. My job is to evaluate my team, my resources, and get better. I think they absolutely need to be on the lookout for 310 plus guys that might and should and could and will become available this summer. I'm not saying there's any that are going to come in and take anybody's job, but I would be a little surprised if come August 15th, we don't have at least two 320 pounders part of the 100-man roster in camp fighting for roster spots.
Yeah. I mean, it's something we've talked about a lot with this team. They're going to have to figure out ways to get over the lack of the massive one-gapping fronts, and that's not really been what Ulbrich has done, but we'll see. I don't think we've heard much as far as what the team sessions look like and how they're deploying guys. They're pretty tight-lipped. A lot of times, I know in Denver especially, it's the secret, like Area 51 level stuff that they're not allowed to say anything. But yeah, it's something that they're looking for. The issue with being buyers is this team is kind of they don't have the assets to really be buyers. You still have questions about the big contracts long-term. You got to take care of London. Where's the dead cap hits? And there's some offensive line turnover that's bound to happen soon that I keep coming back to. Outside of Penix, what's the most important thing for this team? Keeping Penix healthy in the offensive line, probably. So area you can look at, but I think you're probably a year off from that. And it's hard because the guys making decisions are very much in a save our skins right now position. So it's tough.
There will be cap casualties. There will be players that become available, and the Falcons should absolutely be looking there. They should be looking there in cornerback. Those are the 2 biggest ones for me, is corner and defensive tackle nose guard. Big type. So it's a great question, Tony. I'm glad you were able to join us this morning. Keith hits this one. This might be number 1 for a lot of y'all. Good to see you, Keith. Good morning. He says, big key, Raheem Morris needs to get his team playing with belief and passion. Let's have some fire out there. Yeah, just game management. the making the right decisions, whether it's personnel, who should be pulled, when and where. Kirk Cousins played too long last year. That was a mistake. It's not a fireable mistake. I mean, things happen, but he should have been out after the Denver Broncos game. That's easy to say in hindsight, and we probably said it in foresight as well. Some of the end of game management we saw last year, it's got to improve. Those type of things. Taking over a little sooner if things obviously aren't working. Jimmy Lake was just poor overall. But yeah, that's a big one. And then finally, and I've got this as 4, and it might be my number one key, is because I've said it's the biggest variable on this team is the defense as a whole. I feel good about the offense as a fairly constant. I don't think there's a lot of variance in there. I think they should be around a top 10 unit when it comes to yards. Maybe they can climb up into the top 10 with scoring, and maybe, Nick, Kyle Pitts can factor in there. If he doesn't get the volume of touches, maybe he becomes one of those guys who has 30 catches for 500 yards, but he's got 10 touchdowns because they're figuring out how to use him in the red zone more. But it's this defense, and it's Jeff Ulbrich. Mm-hmm. I feel good about the players at edge now that I don't really even worry about, okay, you got to go get an edge rusher. You did. There's enough bodies there between Leonard Floyd, James Pierce Jr., and Jalen Walker, D'Angelo Malone, Arnold Ebiketie to put pressure on the pass rusher if you put them in the right positions at the right times and make the right calls, disguise your blitzes, et cetera, et cetera. Keeping your linebackers, speedy linebackers out there and finding the right fit in the secondary. It's going to be all up to Jeff Ulbrich to put a better defense out there. I firmly believe he will. I think it's the number one variable. It's the number one key, but I found a hard time believing that this defense doesn't improve in 2025.
Yeah. No, I mean, it'd be pretty hard with the assets that you've tossed at it. The one thing I will say, and when talking about the defense, a lot of it is Jenga, if you will. Like, what's the one piece that if you pull it, the tower comes tumbling down? And I think probably the best player in your defense is Bates, but he's still a safety at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. If you lose Terrell for any sort of time, I really wonder what it looks like. Now, he's been volatile, but I just feel like for how the back 7 operates, you don't have the obvious fillers in there. But we talked about the offensive line, the defensive line. If Terrell loses some time, I think that completely changes what you can do. Now, he's been volatile year to year also, so there's some level of he's not like the Broncos losing Surtain or the Texans losing Stingley, but he's the one Jenga piece that I feel like if you pull him out, I don't know how the tower stands.
Oh, I'm already worried about corner anyway. Mike Hughes at one side. There's questions at nickel. Well, that was one of the keys was the defensive backfield. They can't afford to lose one of those two guys. They just can't lose pay. And again, number one on this is we could put that as instead of, hey, the support is what's the best way to help the show. We could always just put as our running disclaimer here. None of this matters if injuries decimate the team. That's a given. Number one is be healthy. Have your key players healthy. That's always number one on here. For some wild cards I put in here, guys to watch that could change the again, I got math in my head on this. X plus Z equals Y. So much on this when it comes to how are the Falcons going to have a successful season. A couple wild cards to throw in, a couple of jokers, Nick, so to speak. Troy Anderson. I put in DeMarco Helms, who was mentioned earlier as a backside enforcer. And then Rook Arohoro is to me is a big joker out there who could change the formula on this defense. But Troy's a big one because he's so talented that if he's healthy, he is a difference maker on defense on a team that could use some. I'm not counting on it, and neither were the Falcons. That's why they went out and signed Divine Diablo.
Yep. They added redundancy and floor guys to the position. Linebacker is so hard, Scott, because it's so instinctual and chemistry based, and the fact that he's missed so much time already changing positions. You talk about a guy that's a wild card that you're not like depending on completely with Kyle Pitts on offense. That's me with Troy Anderson on defense with less proof of concept for him as well. So it'd be awesome if he became a good piece out there for them. Right now, if he can just be a blitz package player with special teams ability, that's at least a step for me with him. So excited when they drafted him, but right now we are on the wrong path and kind of aimlessly in a canoe without a paddle, it seems like with him.
Yep. Again, so that makes him a wild card. Yep. I'm not expecting We haven't been able to count on him, so I'm not going to. And again, like I said about those players, the Falcons didn't. They didn't count on DeMarco Hellams to come back. They went out and got a couple of safeties. They weren't counting on, Arnold Ebiketie to take this huge rush. They went out and got a couple edge rushers. They weren't counting on Troy Anderson to go out and be a 17-game inside linebacker. They wouldn't sign Divine Diablo. But they still have those guys, and it could still happen for them, which gives depth and competition, something this team sorely lacked last year, and it showed. This is going to be a much more intense camp. It's going to be a much more intense battle in Flowery Branch, and it's going to pay off for the Falcons in 2025. So to sum up my 5 keys, Michael Penix, is he going to be even close to the guy that we think he can be? Caleb McGarry, the tackle outside on the right, he's got variance in his game for sure. Can I get a repeat performance from my wide receivers 2 and 3? And I put DL personnel in there also. Jeff Ulbrich, how big of an upgrade is he going to be for this defense? And then the defensive backfield, the personnel there, I'm still not comfortable with, but you can't fix the whole damn defense in one offseason when you don't have any money. They addressed what they needed to. I'd much rather have the 2 pass rushers than one of the corners in this draft. I was just pleased as punch with this draft this year. We're going to say aloha to Pamela because aloha means hello and goodbye. It's perfect when you say the hi bye as you pass somebody. You can just say aloha. Especially when you're drinking your toasted coconut coffee from lioncoffee.com. So Pamela, good morning. Aloha. We are going to get out of here. We will be back. I'll be back for sure. I'm hoping Nick is not available because he's bringing his wife home and feeling better from the hospital on Wednesday, and he's not here. Otherwise, he's here because things are going well. I'm not sure if Nick's going to be here, and I'm not going to hold him to it. But I'm glad he was here today. I'm glad y'all were here today. We certainly enjoyed the time. Nick, any last words?
No, I just really appreciate the well wishes, and thank you for being flexible with me right now. Like I said, we got back from Charleston. My wife was not feeling well, and I was calling it medical chutes and ladders, where we went to urgent care 3 times. We went to the PCP twice, and they're all like, oh, your blood stuff's fine. Your chest x-ray is good. Your sinus x-ray is fine. It's probably just, a couple of viruses stacked on top of each other. And her fever was getting up to 104, 105. And I'm like, screw it. We're going to the ER. So after 9 hours of sitting in the ER waiting room, we got in there, and bad night. And also after that, I didn't share this also. I got home. So she's been taking fever reducing meds, and got home, dropped the kid off at daycare after all night in the ER, went to the grocery store, came home. The dog popped open a bottle of Tylenol and had some in his mouth. So rushed to the emergency vet to get his stomach pumped, thinking we just killed the dog. Same day. So, man, it's been a week. Yeah, God,
it was fine.
Yeah, he's okay. Thank God. He's not the brightest. He's sweet, but God bless, man. Don't eat Tylenol. But everything's okay there. Just we need answers from my wife, and I'm appreciating all the well wishes, and shout out to my mother-in-law here. That's the reason I'm able to go this morning. She flew in and landed, and she's going to be able to spend some time. But I'm about to sleep on the floor in the hospital next to her just because I feel bad, and she's losing her mind. She hasn't seen a window in a week now, so it's been a nightmare. But we're here.
Yeah, we're glad you're here. We're glad all of y'all were here. I want to say thank you to our Super Chat superstars and all y'all who are in the chat. Edward, thanks for getting us started. Jet Jones, love the name, by the way. Obviously, we're big fans of Jet Jones. So thanks for being here. We will be back. When I say we, I mean the royal we. On Wednesday, check us out at 8:30. If you're watching this after the fact, leave a comment. Got anything want to call me out on? As Nick says when he's closing up our other podcasts, be kind and compassionate, and we'll have a discussion for as long as you want to. Otherwise, if your comment starts with LOL, I'm probably going to delete it. So y'all have a great rest of your week. I'm not going to say hopefully we see a ton of sunshine because I don't mind the cooler, wet weather in June in the Southeast. But y'all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Peace.